Just like Vogel. Brandon Vogel's here with us as well. Okay, so there's 3 for you. Vogel, think about this while DB rattles these off.
Well, let B. Vogues go first. He's a little smarter, I think.
The tables have turned. Vogel, okay, so
at least I think.
The quote we came back with.
I'm assuming I know he's smart.
The quote we came back with was Rhule talking about the young players and studying the playbook because that's what will lead you to play. And he said very few freshmen will do it. So who's a freshman on your mind that will actually do it?
First one that comes to mind, and I guess maybe it's a little bit of cheating because he's been here since January, is Princewell and Momulin.
Correct.
You can just tell from, I think, how he carries himself, and it goes way beyond, I think, just the.
Oh, he froze.
Oh,
it's okay.
A cliffhanger.
He froze on us. Oh, B. Vogues. That's the Wi-Fi.
Gee, dang it.
Gee, dang it. I heard G Wagon and G Baby. No, G dang it.
Hey, Shane, reach out to Vogel, see if he can reconnect for us.
I'm with him.
Mielen was actually somebody on my Super Six.
Yeah.
Way back when. And the other guy on there who I think will be the one. And maybe it's a little bit of cheating too, because I heard Ty mention his name yesterday. Cam Lenhart.
Correct. That's another.
He's somebody that's just all in focused.
Who's the third?
Your boy. My boy.
The easiest one of the bunch.
TA.
Yep.
Tristan Albano.
Correct.
But I don't know how much does a playbook or of a playbook does a kicker have to study?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, he's talking about reps. Guys that are emotionally ready to play early.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the playbook; it's the emotional capacity that you need to be an early contributor.
All 3 guys on
I think
is
the general consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And Tristan Alva, and we said this before. First of all, Tristan's a Sunday talent.
No question.
Sunday talent.
The field goal he kicked yesterday, the one that Adam shared that I had to retweet because I'm like, Adam goes, oh, yeah, he just casually kicked it from 50 yards. I watched that ball go through, and now my view is skewed because I'm watching on Twitter. That would have been good 10, 15 yards further.
He's ridiculous. And he's not even – I mean, he's kind of nursing, his body. So they probably really aren't overjoyed that he's doing that right now. But he's just so competitive, and it's his mind. It's not a lot of guys are physically gifted that are good enough to play on Sundays. I won't say a lot, but when you put their mind with it, that's kind of the deal breaker. He likes pressure. Alvano's a Sunday talent.
Mm-hmm. And as a kicker, you have to really embrace that pressure.
Yeah. I just messing with him all day yesterday. All I kept saying is, hey, you still dialed? He said, I'm always dialed, coach. He's just, we're dialed. How
quickly do you think he takes over the duties?
Could be day one.
Speaking of, we got Brandon back.
All right, we got B. Vokes.
Okay, B. Vokes. Bring him back in.
All right.
There he is.
So you froze right after you were getting ready to get into the telltale signs of Princewell.
Yeah, I hope you guys liked my answer because the universe did not, apparently. What I was starting to say was, obviously, he made a splashy debut, I think, for most people in the spring game. But I think just looking at the way he carries himself, and the way that he's come in and been ready, really tells you the story. And it was super interesting, that Rhule quote, kind of the acknowledgement of the circumstances of look, not a lot of guys are going to do this. And I think a lot of coaches deal with that. Well, I think all coaches deal with that of these habits are kind of hardwired for people of this age at this point, and they're hard to break. But all you can do is say, hey, if you want to be out there right away, you say what he said. This doesn't help you.
Pretty interesting.
Give me 2 more.
Oh, let's see. Um, does a kicker count?
He absolutely
Yes,
does.
and I said him too when we were trying to get you back.
Well, are you going to go 3 for 3? He may go 3 for 3.
So TA is who you would say second on that list.
Yep. And I probably will stick to the D line for the other one and go with Linhart.
Yeah, that's why we let Brandon go
Oh,
first.
hold on.
That's
Did you
why.
just pluck those out of my brain.
That's why.
While you were gone, that's who I had ended up saying. Those three.
There we go.
I think some would get there with with two of the three, or they may try to slide in if he does such. I think those are the three surefires. The others need some things to go right, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
Positionally, especially like it just opportunity.
You got an off the radar guy you're interested in, Brandon, because he's so. Let me preface this by saying, right, if you split the practices in two, which he's done, right, so you have most of the older guys going for the first couple of hours, and then the second wave of younger guys go the second couple of hours, because he said the first 4 or 5 days he wants the coaches to get a look at everybody. So keep that in mind. Like when you're evaluating, everybody's going to get seen. So you don't have to worry about, well, this guy may only get such and such a reps, because the way that they split the numbers, I think they want you to be able to get some reps. Is there a couple of guys that you think have a chance to make a move under that particular practice structure?
I mean, I think it benefits the freshmen for sure, but some of those guys who are in that group with them, it offers an opportunity for them as well. I mean, he wouldn't be very far off the radar for me. He'd probably be number 4 of the three guys that we just talked about. But just haven't seen as much from him. But Eric Fields, I think, is a fairly good pick as a freshman. You know, like I said, for the guys that weren't here in the spring necessarily, or somebody like Tristan, who we're aware of from just high school football in the state, it's a little bit harder for me to know some of the intangible pieces of it. The like, how willing are you to put down the phone? But super talented guy, and it was pretty clear early on that the coaching staff was really high on him, which is still a good story. Before Nebraska jumped in, he was headed to Arkansas State. It's not like they flipped him from another Power 5 school. So I'm really intrigued to see him. He's the first one that comes to mind.
Vogel, we just went through a little bit of the housekeeping details with Miles Farmer, and it had me thinking during the break that the 10-80-10 principle that Rhule said he was going to adopt from Urban Meyer, he's actually following through with what he says. And, it's not just coach speak with him, but the follow through is absolutely real. Are you starting to notice that 10-80-10 principle kind of being implemented now that you are seeing, him just kind of tell 4 guys, not really 4, just 2 guys going into the first day of fall camp, like, no, you need to figure some things out before you come back, that he's not focusing on the bottom 10, but he really does have a focus on the top 10 and then the top 10 of the 80 and so forth down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clearly there in the actions. I think that's a good point. So you have Miles Farmer, a guy that I remember when Damon and I, when he signed, were both like pretty high on, just based on his ability coming out of high school.
Hey, and Brandon, full disclosure, don't let people tell you that he's not good. He's slow. Listen, that one hurts. So, and they were willing to do it. Don't operate under like some of these knuckleheads out here that'll tell you this guy isn't very good. Like, he made a ton of strides physically.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, and they were willing to do it, I think, is the key phrase. Because Fleeks, a guy they had a relationship with from way back, he was there. It was, shorter term, but Anthony Grant in spring football missed one of those early practices. And Rhule said something really similar to what he said about Farmer. It's like, it's not a big deal. It's not like there was a major violation of team rules. It just wasn't what we needed. So we gave him a break, and then ball's in their court, as Rhule said. And Anthony Grant was obviously not out for very long, but came back, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with Farmer.
Let me ask you something, B. Vogues. Of the three kind of, so he told a guy to stay home that he knows. Some may think it's easier or harder, right? Do you want to tell a friend bad news or tell a stranger bad news? You had Bob Wager, you have Miles Farmer, who is a guy that has a lot of playing experience. Which one do you think resonates the most with how the players felt about said individual versus the ramifications of what happened? Who do you think will have the biggest impact on the players? Like, man, these guys are not messing around.
Probably Farmer, just given the players' familiarity with him and the amount of football he's played. I mean, we talked all offseason because it was true. Like, Nebraska returns their entire secondary, their entire starting secondary. And yeah, there's some injuries there, but here's a guy who, prior to noticing he wasn't at Fan Day, like, I think all of us probably would have slotted in, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I do think, like, this defense, there's still plenty of movement to be had in these next 3 to 4 weeks, but just given the familiarity that the current team has with him, I think it has to be him. And those guys can see, like, they know how they've had to modify their behaviors individually, and they know what it was prior. So I think having both pieces of that probably lead me towards the returning upperclassmen as kind of the most poignant example for anybody who maybe is not in that top 10%, but trying to get there. Like, okay, here's how it can go the other way, for somebody that we probably know pretty well.
Josh Fleeks, I think, would be the one for me.
So would you guys rather tell somebody bad news or a stranger bad? Like,
I'd rather tell a stranger bad news over somebody I know, because I would worry more about hurting their feelings.
But the level of comfortability wouldn't trump
But
that.
I think the impact that it has on everyone else, if you tell the person hey, go home. You're overweight, go home. That to me would, like, as a player on this team, it would resonate more.
I think it's interesting, B. Vogues. It's like, and I hate this. It's like when something happens and a guy or gal leaves, they weren't very good or they don't do this. So, now it's Wager wasn't a good coach. He didn't have a good relationship with his players. It's Miles Farmer was slow. He was never this. It was Fleeks was, an addition, a throw in. It was kind of a buddy going to follow a buddy. Like, the way that we minimize things when they're not our guy, I think it not only stymies that person's growth, but it also diminishes the impact of the decisions that the decision makers are trying to make by even going through with the punishments, right? Like, if it's not that big of a deal, then why bother doing it?
Yeah, I hate it too. It's a defense mechanism, and I get it, because you spend all this time, like, trying to consider, for those people who are really, really into it, really passionate about it, trying to consider, like, okay, well, what's secondary look like? What's running back look like? Et cetera, et cetera. But, like, we see it all the time. JD Spielman produced a lot at Nebraska, and when he chose to depart, it happens with almost everyone. Like, maybe Wandale was the one I can think of recently where it was like, oh yeah, that one just really hurts. Like, I didn't hear a lot of people out there being like, oh, it's fine.
Like, why would he spend time going to hire Bob Wager if Bob Wager, he didn't see that potentially being a good fit? Right now, maybe things changed on the job, maybe they didn't with his decision making, but he was of value to him at some point, right?
Yeah, that absolutely was. And you can extend that same thing to recruits. Everybody is here. You get the chance to choose who you think you could win games with. And yeah, players develop at different rates and have different levels of buy-in, sure, but it's tricky. Like, it's a hard kind of middle ground, I think, to walk. Of sometimes I worry for myself of moving on a little bit too quickly of not being like, well, Miles Farmer, he wasn't good. I definitely don't think that. But it's like, well, he's out. So what are you going to do next? And you go, and there's just, football in particular, I think, is so much about it's kind of the ultimate team game. And yeah, maybe your next guy up isn't as physically talented, maybe isn't experienced as, say, a Miles Farmer or somebody akin to that. But he's one of 11 guys on that side, and one of probably 22, 23, 24 that are going to play regularly in a game for you. So I worry about minimizing it from the other direction of just being like, well, this is your reality now.
And I'm not, listen, I get it. I completely get it. And I'm not here trying to say that Miles Farmer is Troy Polamalu, but I'm saying realistically as a coach, this is just a coach's vantage point. You're playing in a 3-3-5, right? And you got 5 DBs, and that fourth or the fifth DB is a guy that can sometimes have to play closer to the line of scrimmage and be able to cover like backs out of the backfield and stuff like that. So you get thin in a hurry, right? It's Omar Brown, Deshaun Singleton, Phelan Sanford. Like if you just do the numbers and you get away from just the quote unquote value or the potential of the player, it gets, from an inexperienced standpoint, it gets hectic in a hurry, right? Does that mean you have to do something different with Isaac? There's a lot that happens just from the volume of reps that I think, with looking at it too topically, it makes it too easy to be dismissive. Like, again, I'm not saying he's winning the Jim Thorpe. I'm just saying from a coaching standpoint, coaches don't want to have to be like that until they have to be like that.
Yeah, they don't. And you hope kind of the test tube version of your team that you start fall camp with, which I guess, Miles Farmer didn't start fall camp with. But in the case of an injury or something, is the team you get to pour out onto the field come opening kickoff. But it never happens that way. So, and good coaches kind of, I think, try to account for that, but also make good decisions when those unfortunate instances happen. And we'll see. Nebraska's had one practice so far. There's plenty to go. There's a reason that returning production and things like that matter, and you can't replace that from somebody like a Miles Farmer if he doesn't return. But so it is. You don't have a choice. You got to figure it out.
Vogues, I want to touch on the dorm life a little bit here, especially when talking the younger players being further along because of the experience that is on this team or in the room. It extends with the upperclassmen rooming with the younger players on the team. I mean, who would have thought that Ty Robinson would be rooming with, I think it's Eric Fields, or, whatever the pairings end up being.
He's got Fields.
As Nebraska continues to build this culture, how similar is this method to what fraternities use in regards to having bigs and littles, and what do you think is the ultimate goal behind these roommate pairings?
Well, we were talking earlier about consistency with the 10-80-10 principle and how we've seen that. This is another instance of them just doing exactly what Matt Rhule said he was going to do. I mean, he said really early on, like, I want our guys to be around each other. And so this, takes an additional step of like, you're not going to choose your roommate. We're going to pair you up based on, who we think can help whom. And we'll see. I mean, I sat there and watched the press conference yesterday, and I knew they were doing this, but I was like, it's such a simple idea, but it seems already like an idea that, and it'll be hard to tell. But it seems already like an idea that's going to have an impact of like, just get those guys together. They're going to go through this for 2 weeks. It's like summer camp within fall camp a little bit. And, think back to freshman dorm days. They were weird, strange times, but, I think most of the people I know to this day still have people that they stay in touch with from their freshman floor. This isn't quite that, but it's just, it's what they said. It's like, let's get these people together. And, and the other piece of it was, get comfortable being uncomfortable, which is pretty well-worn coaching cliche. But the other part Rhule said there that I think is everything in a nutshell. Like the past maybe 15 years of Nebraska football, when he was talking about you're given a lot, but you're not given wins. For me, that's been the struggle for however long you want to go back, 15, 20 years for Nebraska. And it's hard. And every program, I think, that's in Nebraska's spot in the like national hierarchy, the historical hierarchy, has to deal with that to a degree. You go to Auburn right now. You're going to be given a lot. It's going to feel like big time football. It doesn't mean the big time wins just get dropped at your doorstep.
It was so interesting you say that. I know I got a couple minutes, but so Coach Rhule and Trev were talking, and they were talking about the grass fields and how they have these mats now that line the fences out because they're 2 football fields, and the mats just provide for protection. And Coach Rhule said, "Hey, thank you. This looks fantastic. Like, how can you not be appreciative of this?" And Trev said, "Well, it was your idea. Like, I mean, give yourself some credit." And deadpan, straight face, Coach Rhule looked at Trev and he said, "It's not my money. People typically don't ask for things that are free. Like, I appreciate it." I just was like, I almost went home on that one, right? Like, just to the immediate
appreciation.
You're talking about a guy that makes $8 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Who's got a little in the bank, right? It's like, and it just seems so free flowing. Like he didn't have to bat an eye at it,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of straightforwardness, I guess would be the word I would use, in the extreme. And, talk about kind of you have to earn the wins. I've talked about how in the past couple of months, how like Rhule is maybe the first coach where in the last like at least 3 where it doesn't feel like the job feels too big for him. And I think it's because he just keeps it straightforward. Like it's just like, yeah, I asked for mats. You bought them, so thank you.
T-Vokes, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for your time this morning. We will talk again next week.
Thanks, B.
You guys. Thanks.
That is Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter.
I really like that guy.